All right, we are live. Welcome to Pro Life, Pro Liberty Live on Monday, August 24th. So I went live just like about 30 seconds early, just because I wanted to make sure that we were live on time every time. So I got one request for today's stream, which was to talk about schools reopening. And I did talk about that before schools reopened. I talked about what was coming. And so now is kind of a good time, I guess, to do a recap of what is now. I'll talk a little bit about what's happening in my area and also what I'm seeing in some other districts. And so, one thing I wanted to bring up, together, I think I found it. Um, And so one thing I wanted to bring up was that the there's a school district in Tennessee, and you may have already heard of this one, but I found this by searching on, uh just in Google, Tennessee school waiver, and some other stuff came up, like actual, like normal waivers, like liability waivers and things that you sign. But there's one that a particular district, and let me double check. It's the Rutherford County Schools, which they've backtracked some of this. So initially, they were asking parents to sign a document saying that they were not going to eavesdrop on their children's virtual school lessons. So that is that the kids are are doing school online through Zoom or Google Meets or other similar video conferencing software. And the parents were asked to sign a form saying they would not listen in on those classes, which was concerning to many parents for good reason. Thankfully, my own school district has not tried to put out a policy like this. There was a lot of backlash, and the school district does say, okay, you can listen in, you just can't record. Which then again, also, it's that's one of those that to me is it's on the fence, um, because then it makes it really difficult if a parent does hear something they don't want to they don't think is correct or they think is being done incorrectly. You want parents you want parents to be able to prove it, right? And so, the concern here, if you're kind of like, well, what's the point of this? Like, why does this matter? The concern is that there already have been teachers on social media, especially on Twitter, talking about how they're concerned that parents are going to be able to listen in on conversations about race, gender, sexuality, sexual orientation that they are going to be having in their classrooms. And the concern is that because the parents may not hold the, enlightened views that the teacher holds, that the parents are going to be a drawback to those conversations because the kids are going to feel like they can't speak freely, like they would in the classroom, which to me is very, very concerning. Because what that means is, parents, if you have your kids in public school, your kids' teachers, maybe not all of them, like I'm a public school teacher and this isn't something that I do. So not every teacher is doing this, but there's a chance that your kid is being indoctrinated. I mean, if your kid's in public school, they're being indoctrinated, but there's a chance that they're being indoctrinated on issues as sensitive as race and gender and sexuality, in such a way that the teachers are afraid of you hearing what they're saying to your student. And to me, if I had a child in public school, I'd be getting them out right now. I would not leave them in public school for a moment longer than I had to. There are some excellent homeschool curriculum resources that are available to parents. There are groups of parents that are getting together and hiring teachers. So they're splitting the cost among several families to hire a teacher to create essentially a micro school. And then if nothing else, at least looking into the kind of K-12 public online school options, because at least then you're not necessarily being indoctrinated by a specific school campus or school district. It's more of a generic generic online school curriculum. Also, the K-12 public school options, or K-12 is one of the is one of the schools that I've heard of. These options do allow you to like they allow you to have that online school experience, but they know a little bit more what they're doing uh, as opposed to most school districts right now. So there's several concerns to be had regarding the way schools are reopening right now. Number one, the schools that are reopening online only, the concern there is that the majority of these school districts have no idea what they're doing with online instruction, and the majority of the teachers are not comfortable enough with online instruction to do a good job of it. So your kid is getting substandard education, even if you had excellent teachers, even if like your kid's teacher last year was amazing. Um, this year, those same teachers are now essentially first year teachers because we're all trying to figure this out at the same time. We're all trying to learn how this works, and we don't know what we're doing. Okay, I'm just gonna say we don't know what we're doing, right? We're brand new to this. Um, some of us are more adaptable to new technology than others. So depending on your students' teachers, maybe they are more kind of on top of things. But but it's important to understand that this is new territory for the vast majority of school districts. So even if you're, making assuming the best from everyone, putting the best construction on everything, at best, this is new territory, and schools don't really know how to best teach their students in a way that is going to keep them on track with what they need to learn this year, and keep them making progress forward. At worst, we are activists in the classroom that are purposefully indoctrinating your children to believe whatever narrative it is that they are promoting, whether it's a narrative about gender and sexuality, whether it's a narrative about race. We're seeing this kind of issue where, the discussions about racial justice, and about equity can sometimes turn into conversations in which, um, you know, white people are told to be ashamed of their skin color or of their race, which when you teach that to children, that if they are white, they need to be ashamed of themselves, or that that's something to be ashamed of, or that's something that to be, you know, treated differently, that is contrary to a message of racial equity. And so there are some people who are taking this conversation in the wrong direction. Rather than talking about equitable opportunities and removing barriers and things like that, there are people who are going into this idea of, if you're white, you need to pay reparations to people who are not white, and that sort of thing. So if that's stuff that you're concerned about, your child being indoctrinated with those kinds of ideas, you need to be really paying attention to what your public schools are doing. Um, that's for the schools that are operating online. So you're going to have this narrative that your children are being indoctrinated with online, with not the best delivery of content, the best methods of teaching. Um, And those schools that are going back in person, now I think there's a few that are really truly going back in person and truly reopening. And I want to applaud those schools that have truly decided to step up and say, you know what, it is important that we provide a good education to our students. We are not going to let COVID and all this other stuff get in the way of doing that job. We'll take, and some are taking more precautions than others. Um, I know there are several schools that when they return to campus, if they haven't already, are going to be doing something that is just going to be unrecognizable, for most students and parents. I know schools that are looking at potentially, I know middle schools that there are middle schools that are looking at having 11 to 13-year-olds sit in one desk the entire day in front of a Chromebook. In school learning, the only difference between in school learning and at home learning is where the child is sitting in front of the Chromebook. So if your concern is, I don't want my kid sitting in front of a Chromebook all day and sitting in front of a screen all day, they're 10, they're 11, they're 12. I want them to be out socializing with other people in person. I want them to be doing things hands on, not just sitting in front of a screen. Um, that's, in many schools, even going back in person, it's still going to be sitting in front of a screen. It just won't be in your own home anymore. And there's going to be some real concerns with that. Many schools are requiring masks. So if you're somebody who's concerned about the effects of long-term mask wearing, and how people who are wearing masks all day for work are getting hypoxia symptoms, and you don't want that happening to your child, it is important that you know, look at what your school, what your district is going to be doing regarding masks and regarding these other precautions that they're taking. So that's kind of just my thing um, on the public school system, and just in general, the public school system is broken. It has been for a long time, and I think the COVID thing is just starting to um, reveal some of the cracks in the foundation. And the thing is, people are looking for cosmetic fixes. They're looking to throw more money at the problem. They're looking to make things look nicer, new software, new training, and they're not addressing the serious flaws in the foundation of the public school system. And because of that, you're not really getting a solution that's going to make it better. So I would still say, if you can get your kid out of the public school system, please do so. Don't leave them in the public school system if you do not have to. So that's my thing about public schools and reopening. And if you have other questions about that, please feel free to put them in the comments, and, let me know what is, on your mind about this, and what you would like me to talk more about. Um, but it's not a good system. It's not a good situation for anyone, for teachers, for students. And I would honestly recommend get your kids out of the public school system as soon as possible. Just don't put them through this. It's not going to be good. But I do want to talk. So I wanted to talk about schools reopening. I also wanted to talk about Kenosha, Wisconsin, and being prepared for September. So if you're not familiar with Kenosha and what happened, and I'm just going to pull up a article, do a screen share here. And let's do So this is an article from like NBC5 Chicago, like a local. So Kenosha, Wisconsin, just for context for anybody who's not familiar with the northern Midwest, Kenosha, Wisconsin is right smack dab in between Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Chicago, Illinois. So it's actually closer to the Illinois border than it is to Milwaukee. So it's practically Illinois, Wisconsin, Illinois area. That whole Milwaukee, Chicago area, um, you know, it's all that same area. And Kenosha is a small town. If you look at it on Google Maps, it's not totally isolated from the big cities, but it's also not strictly a suburb. It's got there is some separation between Kenosha and both Milwaukee and Chicago. They're kind of separate. Um, so it's an interesting thing that this is, it's happening in this small town here. But what happened was yesterday, um, and this is a very quick reaction because, we saw with George Floyd in May, we saw the video started making the round. I don't even think it was the same day that his death happened. But and then it took a few days to really see the riots that we're seeing now, or the protests that we're seeing now. And with Kenosha, with this incident, it was pretty much instantaneous. I mean, this event happened, this shooting happened, and within hours, you had people out on the streets um, over this incident. So let's just talk a little bit about what happened in case you're not familiar. Um, so basically, this man, and I want to make sure I'm getting his name correct because there's a lot of pictures, and we'll go back to these pictures. Jacob Blake. Jacob Blake is the name of the man who was shot by police. And the thing is, we really do not have good details yet on exactly why the police were called out to the scene here, what the situation was. There's a video clip that is going around that starts after whatever the initial thing was that the police were called out for. But what I want to say is that regardless of why the police were called out, this is one of those where you watch the video and you say there was no justification for what happened here. And people are going to try and justify it. And it drives me crazy when they do. Um, because if you watch the video, I'm not going to play it right here because it is a disturbing video. If you watch the video, you see a man walking around his car. So he's out on the lawn in front of a house, and there's police, and the police have their weapons drawn, they're aiming their weapons at this man, Jacob Blake. And he walks around the car, and let me make sure I'm saying his. First, I just want to make sure. Yes, Jacob Blake. Okay, that is his name. I want to make sure I'm not messing up his name, because I think that's important that we're getting his name right and that we're getting the story straight, as far as, especially at this point, because we have so many different names that we're talking about. So I think it's important that we make sure we're getting the name right. But Jacob Blake, he walks around the car, and the police follow him, pointing their weapons at him and shouting at him. He opens the door to his car. Now, he had, I believe, 3 children inside the car that were, his children in the car. Um, and he walks around and he opens the driver's side door, and he's going in to get something out of his car, and we don't know what he was getting out of his car. At this point, it sounds like he was not armed. There was not a gun in his car. Even if there was a gun in his car, like, he has every right to be armed, or there's, oh, and I just do want to clarify here. At this point, my last I have heard, he is in stable condition. He did survive this. We're hoping that he makes a recovery so that he can actually share his story, because a lot of times in these situations, the person who is shot does not get to share their side of the story, because they're dead. In this case, it does sound like he is in stable condition, last I've heard. Um, and hopefully that means he'll get to share his side of the story. But the fact that he's in stable condition is astounding, given what was done to him. Because so he reaches into the car to get something out, and the police shoot him 7 times, I believe, in the back. Multiple times. They shoot him multiple times in the back, um, grabbing his shirt. Like, so the police have him by the shirt. They're holding on to the back of his shirt and then shooting. And it's just like a very surreal thing to watch, because this is not police officers in a shootout with somebody who's trying to attack them. This is a man. We don't know what he was getting out of his car. We don't know if he was trying to leave the scene. We don't know if he committed any crime. But the reaction from the officers was not warranted. And what I'm hearing from a lot of people is that the police officer was justified in firing those shots, because what if there had been a gun? What if he was getting a gun out to turn around and shoot the police officer? This is my problem. Every time this is used as a justification for a police shooting, my issue is, when we think of a good cop, we think of a noble cop, somebody who is out there to safeguard his community or her community. the phrase that we use when we talk about good cops, we use that they put their life on the line for their community. They put their life on the line. When a police officer wants to be there for their community, they want to protect their community and safeguard the innocent. That should be the job of a police officer, right? Like in an ideal world, that should be what we're doing. Okay. Make sure I'm not like double sending audio here. Apologize if the audio was weird there. But anyway, when we have a police officer who wants to put themselves out there to protect their community, they put their life on the line, and that is a decision that they make. They are choosing to put themselves in that situation where they know they could get hurt, they could get killed. Jacob Blake did not make that decision. He did not put his life on the line. He did not say, "Oh, I'm gonna put myself in the situation where I could be killed." He did not make that decision. We don't know the full details of what he was trying to do. I'm seeing some reports that he was breaking up a fight, but Jacob Blake did not make the same promises. He did not undergo the same training. He did not have the same resources and weapons that police officers have. He's just a guy. And so if we're looking at whose life is in danger, clearly Jacob Blake was in more danger for his life than the police officer. But the police officer felt that they were in danger and shot 7 times. So here's my question. Listen, believes from a police officer. That citizen, does that citizen have the same right to use deadly force against a police officer because they feel that their life is in danger? And many would say, no, they don't. Of course they don't. That'd be awful. Well, why? Why? It'd be awful because we live in a time right now where many Americans feel that their life is in danger if they have an encounter with police. They feel that if they run into the police, they are going to be in danger of being killed. How many citizens could say, I felt that my life was in danger and so I shot this police officer? How many could say that? So when we say to police officers, you can use deadly force if you believe that your life is in danger. But we don't say the same thing to citizens who believe that they may be a victim of police brutality. I see a serious problem with that we're giving this power to government agents that we do not give to citizens. And that is backwards from what our country is supposed to be. That's backwards from freedom. That's not liberty. Okay? And so when police officers use that justification, they say, "Oh, well, I believed my life was in danger, and so I shot." My response to that is when you go out there as a police officer, you put on a badge, you put on your uniform, you put on you've got your belt with all your tools, with all your equipment. You've got your firearm that was issued by the police department, which is paid for by the taxpayers. You get in your car and you go on patrol, you respond to a call. What are you doing that for? Are you doing that for yourself? Or are you doing that to protect innocent civilians? Is your job as a police officer to protect innocent civilians? If so, if your job is to protect innocent civilians, then why would it be acceptable to you to shoot and kill someone who might be an innocent civilian as part of your job? Why is that acceptable? Regardless of the race of that innocent civilian, regardless, in my view, of whether they committed some minor crime, quote unquote, because a lot of times what happens is the police will say, oh, well, they were resisting arrest or they were refusing to follow orders. And so the police officer shoots them. And that's what they're going to argue in this case with Jacob Blake, is that because he was walking away from police, he walked away. He didn't even run away. He wasn't running. He wasn't fighting. He wasn't attacking the police. He walked away. He was not violent. He was not committing an act of violence, to my knowledge. At least in at the moment that he was shot, he was not trying to commit an act of violence. Why was it acceptable for him to be shot when he was committing no violence? So that's my take on the shooting. Now I want to talk about what happened in the aftermath. So I want people to be clear that I do not condone in any way what the police did to Jacob Blake. And I'm really hoping that his recovery is full and complete so that he can, or that he does recover fully so that he can come out and share his story. And we can get all the details and put all the different questions to rest. And I understand the anger, especially after a whole summer of these protests and then to see something like this happen again. I can understand the anger of the citizens of Kenosha, Wisconsin. But I'm scrolling through these pictures. I'm looking at pictures of, and I want to go back over here. This is a used car dealership in Kenosha that was burnt down. All these cars burnt out shells by the next morning. So the shooting happened yesterday, Sunday, August 23rd. Today is Monday, August 24th, and this is what we're seeing in Kenosha. And I want to know, what did the dealership do? The used car dealership, did the owner of the used car dealership do something to warrant this? Because Jacob Blake did nothing to warrant what happened to him. What happened to him was wrong. By the same token, by the same rule, if what happened to Jacob Blake was wrong, then so is what happened to this dealership. It was a private, it was a small business dealership, a local dealership. And people say, oh, well, they have insurance. Maybe. Let's hope they have insurance, and let's hope their insurance covers this. I hope so. But that's not a guarantee. Not all insurance coverages, not all insurance companies are the same. Does this company have the insurance to cover this? What's going to happen to their insurance premiums going forward? Is this going to put local small businesses that employ people and help people build better lives for themselves, are those businesses going to be put out and replaced by big businesses, by corporations that can afford to deal with this stuff? See, a big corporation can afford this. Doesn't mean it's not going to negatively impact people, but a big corporation, a major company can deal with things like this. A small business cannot. And so when the response to state violence, police violence, is to take out the anger and frustration on private small businesses, that concerns me, because we're misdirecting the anger. The anger is not being directed at the parties responsible. So we have this destruction here that's happening for against people who did not cause the situation. And this destruction will not solve the situation. It will not make things better for Jacob Blake. It will not prevent the next unjustified police shooting. And here's other storefront windows that were smashed, a jeweler that was, and this again, this is like a small business, family owned jewelry store that is, there since 1851 that was smashed and it looks robbed in the process of this. And again, here's more from the dealership and more smashed windows and more vehicles. And it's just, my concern is that we're losing sight of the real problem. And so I do want to bring you to something. And so I wanted to go that, and I'm just going to let you watch you know, what we're doing here. We're going to go to my subscriptions. We're going to go 10th Amendment Center. And I just want to see if we can find really good thing on the police. Here we go. So I'm going to put this link in the description on this live stream, because I want you guys to know that there are solutions to this problem. So I'm just going to go down here and I'll get a little behind the scenes here. And just do 10th Amendment Center. So when we are talking about what needs to be done to stop what's happening right now with the police, we cannot just keep smashing and burning things. Like that is not the solution here. There are solutions. There are real things that we can do to make things better in our communities, to take away the power that the police have, that allows them to kill people with no consequences. And I want everybody to watch that video on getting rid of the police state. And so it's really just, it's 5 steps to stop the police state. And it's things that we can definitely do to fix these problems. And they do not require giving the police any more money. And this is the big thing with the whole defund the police thing. Whether or not you agree with defunding the police, hopefully we can agree that the police do not need more money, right? We don't need to be giving them more funding when this kind of thing is happening. So these 5 steps aren't just to, reform the police. They are to take away the power that the police state has over our lives. And so I'm sharing this with you because I want people to understand that there are solutions to these problems. They don't have to involve rioting and burning things and looting things. But they are real solutions that will make a real difference, and that they do not involve giving another cent to police departments or agencies or anything. They don't involve paying any more money to police. And you can also defund the police alongside these things. If that's what your community, if that's what your city is doing, you can do that too. But these are 5 things that we can actually do to defund or not to dismantle the police state. So please watch that video. I put it in the description. Share it. Share the ideas that are in it. Contact your representatives, um, and say, you know, we're done with this police brutality thing. It needs to be over now. And here's the things that we're going to do to fix it that are constructive, that are solving problems, that are increasing liberty rather than taking it away, and that ultimately are going to help protect people like Jacob Blake and make it harder for police to do things like this in the future and get away with it. So that is my, take on all of this. um, and thank you for watching, whether you're watching now or watching later. But I really, I want to make sure that we are getting on the same page with all this stuff because it's too many things. Um, but before I go, so I talked about schools. I talked about the Jacob Blake case in Kenosha and this general thing about police violence and rioting and why the rioting is not helping, but there are things we can actually do. I do also want to talk about September and October. And I'm hearing more and more from different places. And, this isn't the kind of thing where you can go look up some official government statement or some, kind of official source on this. These are rumors that are circulating. So take them with a grain of salt. This is not prophecy. This is not guarantee. This is not a promise. These are rumors. But there are rumors, and I'm hearing them from multiple different sources that September and October, and it shouldn't be surprising to anybody who's been paying attention this whole year, but that we are going to see increased unrest and increased government overreach and abuse of power and increased chaos in September and October. And we know this even just as it leads up to election day. We know that we're going to see increase in all of this. What happens after? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't want to make any predictions one way or the other. But leading up to election day, I believe things are only going to get worse from where they are now. So some things to do to be prepared. So number one, make sure that you have 2 to 3 weeks of food and water in your home. If something crazy happens in September or October and you are cut off from food supplies, you need to be able to take care of your family for at least 2 to 3 weeks, if not more. 2 to 3 weeks of food and water, non-perishable food and water, that doesn't need to be refrigerated in case there's a power grid issue. I know California is having power grid problems right now. They're having rolling blackouts. Store up non-perishable food that doesn't need a refrigerator. That's important. Have a plan for where you're going to get food if the grocery stores are empty and it's longer than 2 to 3 weeks. So this could be a number of things. This could be if you have local farms in your area that sell direct to consumer. This would be a great time to get to know those farms and start buying from them and become a regular customer. You want to be able to have somewhere to go. Farmers markets, like I would recommend go to your local farmers market this weekend, or sometime this week, depending on when your local farmers market is open. I would go there and have a conversation with some of the different vendors that are there, the different farmers, the different sellers. And, if they have a website, if they have information about their business, get that information so that you know who you can still purchase from if your grocery store is empty or shut down or whatever the case may be. If you can't go to the grocery store, you want to know who are the people in your local area who are still selling food, who are still going to have supplies for sale? Who can you go to? Who can you barter with if we have a financial collapse? Who is going to be more prepared for that sort of thing? So definitely get to know your local farmers, get to know your local growers. Go to your farmers market, find the places that sell direct to consumer, and get to know those businesses. And then of course have a self defense plan, whether that's a firearm or not. Have a self defense plan. Know how you're going to defend yourself and your family if because I think about that car dealership. I think about the neighborhoods that have had protests and riots, families that may or may not support Black Lives Matter, may or may not support efforts to defund the police. You don't know what their political background is, but their neighborhoods are being the rioters are coming to their neighborhoods, and it's like they, regardless of what their political beliefs are, they know that they need to defend their homes and their families. And I think it's important that regardless of what you think about the riots and the police and all of this stuff, that you are prepared if a mob is angry and frustrated and decides to take it out on you and your family in your home. What are you going to do? Are you prepared for that? And so your plan may be having your important belongings, your important documents, and things like that, and supplies ready to pack up at a moment's notice and get out of there. And that may be your plan. You might be a bug out plan, depending on where you live and depending on what your resources are. You may need to bug out, but if you do bug out, you need to know where you're going. You need to have a place that you can go to. Don't just bug out into the woods and be like, all right, see ya. Have an idea of where you're going to go. If you're going to shelter in place, if you're going to defend your home, you need to have weapons to do so, whether they're firearms or not, but you need to be prepared with some sort of weapons to be able to defend yourself. So just having those things in mind and thinking through those things as we go into September and October, and really consider running a drill with your family. If your plan is a bug out plan, consider running a bug out drill where you pack everything up and get in the car and drive to your bug out location. Look at alternate routes to your bug out location. How are you going to get there? The highways are blocked. And then, if you're going to shelter in place, run a drill of, okay, who's defending different entry points to your home, because it's not enough to have one person out on the porch with a shotgun. That's not enough to defend your home. You have to have multiple people who are capable and armed and trained at different entry points, at different key points around your home, and you have to have that plan worked out. And if those people who are defending your home don't live in your home, then you need to start talking to them about how they're going to get to you to help you out when the time comes. So these are things that we need to start thinking about. And if you haven't had these conversations with your family and friends, now is the time. We need to have these conversations. We cannot wait. So I hate to end it on such kind of a scary note, but it's important that we're realistic about what's coming in the next couple of months. We're already seeing so much going on, and people who live in those big cities that have had protests and riots since May understand that how quickly the mob can move into your neighborhood and start tearing things apart. And you need to be prepared to defend yourself. And if you are prepared to defend yourself, simply showing a show of force like, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to defend myself, may be enough to send them packing and send them in a different direction. And, maybe you can prevent some of these things from happening. Same goes with a lot of this government overreach stuff. I'm noticing that, we'll see local governments, state governments, propose some crazy plans, and they get enough backlash that they back down. We see them walk stuff back. It was just a few months ago that Washington and California were discussing forcibly removing COVID patients from their homes and putting them in isolation facilities. That was just a couple months ago, and there was backlash, and they backed down. They walked back their statements, right? So they softened what they were talking about. They walked back from these things. So you can't, these things can be avoided. They can be prevented, but it's important that we speak up and that we're paying attention. So with all of that, thank you guys for listening, and thank you For those of you who are watching later, please make sure you hit like and make sure you subscribe and enable notifications and all of that. I do go live every Monday at 4 p.m. for the foreseeable future. I am back teaching now, but with our current schedule, I don't see any reason why I can't continue at 4 o'clock. I know it's not the perfect time for everybody, but there is no perfect time for everybody. So hopefully this time still works and we can keep doing it up Mondays at 4 p.m. And so if you haven't already followed me, I have Tumblr, I have Twitter, I have Coffee. I also have Parler. Parler is pro-life, pro-liberty. I do need to add that to my lower third. I haven't done that yet. But you can follow me on all those places. And on Coffee, ko-fi.com/pro-life, pro-liberty, you can support the channel directly if you would like to do so. It really does help. So thank you. And I will see you next week on Pro Life,